Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Core Solutions, What is CMMC and Why Should you should be concerned presentation. We are being joined by John Chrisley, who is the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer of Core Business Solutions. For anybody who does not know, Core Business Solutions is one of our Affinity partners, and we are excited that John has been willing to do this presentation on a topic that seems to be so relevant where we are in the world today. So, John.
Great, thank you, Kelly, and good afternoon, everyone. And very happy to be here to talk to you today about this topic. We also want to mention, as you join this GoToWebinar, if you've got questions or comments for us, go ahead in the question area there and go ahead and put your questions, and we will get to them either as they come in or at the end, depending on when we have time to address that question. There'll also be a copy of this presentation sent to everybody who attended, and if you have any questions at all as we go along, we'll try to answer them. Otherwise, we can always answer them later. Again, I'm John Chrisley. I'm our VP and CISO here at Core Business Solutions. Core is headquartered in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. They've been around for 21 years doing ISO and various other compliance help and consulting for customers. And we keep expanding our offerings of services. So when CMMC came out, it was a natural progression to try to help our customers with this area. And there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of things to be concerned about, but it also, hopefully I'm going to give you some, ideas on how it doesn't have to be as scary, doesn't maybe have to be as costly as maybe what you've heard, depending on what you've seen out there. And we'll try to give you some pointers about how to get down this path a little easier, because that's what we're here to do, is really try to make things as easy as possible for our partners and their customers and help get closer to the finish line. And for this particular compliance mandate, the finish line is being ready for an eventual assessment that may be done, obviously being more compliant and more secure at the same time. And so we're going to go through some of this. Happy to be able to talk to you about this. And so here's the agenda that we're going to talk about today, as close as possible. I'm not going to read every word on every slide to you. I'm going to try to offer some color commentary about what you see on the screen. But we're going to talk about what is CMMC for those that may not yet know, and what are some of the requirements under the DFARS interim rule, how this might apply to you. It doesn't apply to everybody the same way. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. There is no one size fits all here about how this applies, or even what your reaction or how your approach to this needs to be. We are going to talk a little bit about some of the levels. You'll hear CMMC Level 1, you'll hear Level 3. I'm going to talk about what that is. It's really just a progression of the standard and the requirements. I'll talk a little bit about preparation and costs, not hard costs with dollars associated with them, but things to be aware of that will cost money as you go down this journey towards CMMC compliance. And then I'll sort of end and I'll round this out with some solutions for small business that we have put together that we think makes this easier for our customers to find their way through this journey that is CMMC. So that's what we're going to try to cover in the hour that we have. And I do want to leave some time at the very end for questions. So I do have a stopwatch nearby, and I'm going to try to keep to time here as best I can. All right, let's get right into it. Let's talk about what is CMMC. Just a brief high-level history. It stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It's a certification that will eventually, not yet, but eventually it will be issued as a certification by an assessment organization, an independent organization called in the industry a C3 PAO. If you're a Star Trek fan or Star Wars, you'll find that sounds very similar to something else, and we butcher it all the time. But it's a third-party assessment organization that's been accredited by the CMMC Accreditation Board to go out and do certifications of customers, of clients, and actually give them this certification. Now, that hasn't happened yet. There has been no certification audits done. The auditors are still being certified themselves. There's a couple of firms that have received their certification, their training, their certification, and they're getting ready. They're getting ready for what will come probably fairly soon, we think. But we're all waiting and trying to see when is this really going to come down and what's it really going to be like. There are 5 levels of CMMC certification that are available. We're going to focus on levels 1 and 3, and I'll explain why when we get there. It's a 3-year certification with no annual surveillance audits required as of right now. That obviously could change as some of these requirements are fleshed out and finalized, but at the moment, what we're all being told is when you get certified, it's good for 3 years, and there's no requirement, at least for CMMC, to have an annual surveillance audit done. Now, if you have other certification requirements like ISO 27001 or others, then there could be other requirements that you have to comply with. But right now, we're focused on CMMC. DoD contracts are supposed to, in the future, specify the appropriate level of CMMC certification that is required for that contract. So the expectation is that you all will see eventually contracts that say level 1 is required, level 3 is required. Some at certain levels, and depending on the contract, could even have levels 4 and 5. But we haven't seen them yet. We actually have started to see some language creep into our customers' contracts asking about NIST and CMMC and what people are doing to be ready for it, especially NIST. And I'll even explain that more here as we go. So this comment, this bullet here at the bottom, the CMMC assessments will begin in 2021. That's what we were told. They haven't happened yet, and we're getting really close to the end of 2021. So we're all waiting to hear when the first actual certification assessments will begin. But first, again, they had to train the auditors, if you will, the assessors. And there are 3 or 4, I think the number's 4. I know 2 of the companies. There are a couple of firms that have received their assessor. They are now 3, I'm reading it right off the screen, C3PAO organizations. They are certified, they're ready to go. And so we're all waiting to hear who are they going to audit first and how many have to be audited and when. Now, what the DoD and this has been put out there is that all suppliers to the DoD will have to be CMMC certified at some level by 2026. But obviously there's a good deal of time between now and then, and a lot could change. And so we're all just watching very closely to see how this goes. All right. Now let's talk about the objective. I think a lot of times people do get wrapped up in the cost. Obviously everybody should, but also the complexity and some of the fear that's out there in the industry about this. But we need to kind of bring ourselves back to why CMMC is out there in the first place. What was the objective? The objective was to protect that sensitive defense-related information, which is FCI, federal contracting information, and CUI, controlled unclassified information, that is maintained throughout the defense industrial base, the DIB. See, there's lots of acronyms sprinkled all throughout this ecosystem. But the whole purpose of CMMC is to protect this sensitive information from our nation's adversaries, okay? They wanted to create a single unified standard of cybersecurity for all DoD contractors and their subcontractors. They wanted to be able to verify and sustain these protections that are implemented. So before this, there was NIST requirements that have been around for a while. We'll talk about that, but it was a self-assessment process. And what was found over the years was that's not working very well. Either people aren't doing it, or even when they do it, maybe they don't quite understand, or they're not being 100% truthful, but sensitive information was still leaking to our adversaries. And our adversaries were still able to break in and steal this very sensitive information. You'll hear horror stories about plans for jet fighters falling into the hands of our adversaries, and that's really bad for our wartime fighters. Okay, that's really, really bad for the country as a whole. So this is where CMMC is striving to be. Okay, this is really the reason why it's being done, is to protect that information. All right. Now it expands. CMMC didn't just pop up as some new standard. It really expands on existing regulations that are out there. And you'll see here a regulation called FAR 52204-21. And that was, it applied to all government contractors. It's basic safeguarding of covered contractor information systems. And then there's DFARS 252-204-7012, which is safeguarding covered defense information and cyber incident reporting, which is a real big thing, right? The government wants to know when there's been an incident at a contractor or a subcontractor, because that could have downstream effect or upstream effect. And so that was for all defense contractors. And so these standards that are out there, CMMC took those and expanded upon those. And yes, in some cases, creates more stringent requirements, expands even beyond what some of these requirements had. But the idea was that these new CMMC requirements, if you will, should not be completely foreign to the DoD subcontracting world, because they should have already been familiar with some of these others and some of the NIST requirements that are out there. We find that that's not exactly the way it goes sometimes with certain people, and some of this is very, very new, but that was not exactly the intent when this was built. All right, so FCI, okay, Federal Contract Information. What is this? Well, it's information that's not intended for public release. It's provided by or generated for government under a contract to develop or deliver a product or service to the government. So this is, in other words, information that's not available publicly. It needs to be protected. It's not available to the general public. Okay, this is the focus of that CMMC Level 1 that we'll talk about. Now, controlled unclassified information, CUI, is information that the government creates or possesses, or that an entity creates or possesses for or on behalf of the government, that a law, regulation, or government-wide policy requires or permits an agency to handle using safeguarding or dissemination controls. I know that's a big, long paragraph. Okay, this is the focus of CMMC Level 3, is protecting that CUI. But if you can see what's going on here is between Level 1 and Level 3, what we're talking about in CMMC is protecting sensitive information. Sensitive to who? Well, that's subjective. But if you wonder what information, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to show you some examples, but there's a whole registry, and there's a link here on the screen, archives.gov.cui, and that's the entire registry. It's a lot to look through, and so I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit for us and talk about some examples. What are some examples of CUI? There's a lot more, by the way, but these are just some examples. So you can look down through this list, and maybe there's some of these that really pop out at you and say, I understand that, like engineering drawings. Okay, I think that should be very clear cut to everybody. Engineering drawings need to be protected. Specifications, standards, process sheets, manuals, technical orders, data sets, right? All these. Some other things that may not be as apparent that are here listed as examples, things like personally identifiable information. What is this? Well, this could be information about your employees, yourself, right? As an employee, this could be their personal information. This could be their social, their driver's license, their passport information, where they live. A lot of this is, there's actually categories of PII, but that needs to be protected as well. And that shouldn't come as a shock or a surprise, right? But that is included in here as CUI. Another one that I'll just point to really quick is information about vulnerabilities in your IT systems. That's right there at the top of the list, information systems, vulnerability information. So if there's information, like if you have a company like Core and you hire us to do vulnerability scanning or pen testing of your IT systems, well, those reports, that data that we give you on the holes or the vulnerabilities, that needs to be protected, just like everything else. Because if that falls into the wrong hands, obviously then hackers, yes, adversaries, nation states, ransomware, malware, all this stuff could find its way into your environment, and you don't want that. That's really bad for everybody, okay? I'm gonna keep going. So a safe approach to take is if you've got DFARS 252-204-7012 in your contract, treat all documentation and information relating to that contract as CUI. This is the guidance we give as a company to our clients and partners, that just a safe bet, a safe approach here is if you've got this, DFARS in your contract, just treat all this information as sensitive information and protect it. Protect it the best you possibly can. And we're going to give you some ideas about how to do that. You'll hear us even talk about creating a separate enclave, carving out an area of your network, your buildings, your computer systems to handle this sensitive information. And that is definitely an approach that a lot of our customers take. There's also an approach where you just treat everything you've got, for the most part, not literally, but for the most part, as sensitive. Okay, and that way you're kind of protecting it universally, and you get into a habit. You'll hear us say, is it wired into your operation? Is it wired into your being to treat this information as sensitive info so that you can secure it and you really don't have to worry about it from there? Obviously, you do have to worry about it, but hopefully you all understand what I'm trying to, portray here. Let's talk about the DFARS interim rule, and why do we keep talking about this DFARS interim rule in the discussion about CMMC? Well, because it was effective as a rule. The interim rule was effective back on November 30th of 2020. It's not brand new, and so this rule came out. And what did it talk about? It talked about there was already a plan about implementing NIST 800-171, documenting your in-place controls on an SSP, having a plan of action and milestones on a POAM, and being registered on the DivNet portal, kind of getting your SPRS score. And then now there's also some new DFARS regulations that introduce government high and medium controls, talk about CMMC and the defense assessment methodology and your score submitting to SPRS. So this is all upon us as an industry. These are things that we have to be worried about, right? The whole purpose of this webinar is, what is CMMC and what do you have to be concerned with? Well, we all have to be concerned with this because this is the world we live in. If you've got government contracts where this kind of information is flowing through you and your supplier, or other supplier networks in the government, this information has got to be secured, and we all have to take this seriously and address it. All right, so who does the assessment affect? I get this quite a bit. Who's going to be assessed? Who's going to be audited? And do I have to worry? Well, the honest answer is any contractor or subcontractor on a Defense Department contract at any level or tier, and it'll say if the offerer is required to implement NIST 800-171, and if they process, store, or transmit CUI, covered defense information, or controlled technical information. So that's CUI. It's also known as covered defense information. So if you see these DFARS clauses, 252, 204, 7012, 7019, if you see these in your contract language and it says you must be compliant with this, nowadays I'm seeing language flow down from suppliers to subcontractors that says you must be compliant with CMMC or NIST 800-171. These are all your indicators that that applies. It's now time. Okay, maybe it's been time for a while, but it's now time to address this if you haven't already, if you haven't gotten started. And it's not too late. All right, let me just advance the screen here. Give me 1 second. So yeah, this screen advanced to say, do you handle CUI? Do you have DFARS in your contract, right? These are all things that will help you understand whether this applies to you or not. Now, with NIST, and one of the requirements here was to go through NIST assessment scoring template and determine your compliance status and come up with your score, your assessment score, and put this into the SPRS database. That's one of the requirements. And so how do you do this? Well, this is sort of a view that you get of sort of doing it in a spreadsheet view, if you will. You go through each one and they all have a value associated with them. And you're either going to meet these requirements or you're not going to meet those yet. And obviously, from a total 110 points, you're going to deduct not met from the 110 to come up with your score. And these are all weighted scores. And so different ones are scored differently, but you're going to end up with a score that then gets put into the SPRS database. This is one of those requirements. And you're going to put in the date. You're going to go to the SPRS website, the DISA.mil website, There's a whole PDF guide that helps you understand this. And you're going to put in the score. They're going to ask you the date, the summary level score, the scope of the assessment, the plan of action completion date, because the expectation is maybe you do have gaps. Maybe you're not done working on everything that needs to be done to get a perfect score. And so you're going to have a plan of action with milestone dates, and you're going to put that in this supplier performance risk system, the SPRS system. Okay, when? Well, before the next expected contract award. So we're already seeing people that are asking their suppliers or their subcontractors for their, they want to see the SPRS score in the database before they will award a contract or award a renewal even. So this is actually happening today. This is going on right now for some suppliers and subcontractors. And how often? It has to be done at least every 3 years, but you can update it anytime. So you go through this process in the system in our system we have this, and you get your SPRS score and you have a plan of action and milestone. You go and you fill this out and you put your score in, and now you're at least eligible to participate in future contract awards. That's what's going on here. And then you're expected to work down the issues, the plan of action and milestone, right? You have gaps, you have issues that need to be worked on. And so you track those, and obviously that's what we have in our software, on our platform, and that's what we do as a service, is help customers through this. And as you work down these issues and you knock these items off the list, then you go back and you update your score, and you're supposed to update it here in the supplier performance risk system, the SPRS database, as you update your score. Obviously, your score should keep getting better and better until it's as good as it can be, and that is the goal. By the way, it's probably a good just stopping point for just a second. I did forget to mention something in the very beginning during the introduction, that all participants with NTMA get a discount here at CORE on their programs. We have worked out that where we do offer a discount to members for their NIST CMMC programs, and so we're very happy to be able to offer that to the membership. And I just want to make a mention because I glanced over to note that I forgot to make in the very beginning. All right, so let me continue on with the presentation. Obviously here a perfect score in this scoring system is 110. All right, let me just go through. So I just talked through this, but I'll do it real quick. So this is the requirements for the assessment. Complete the self-assessment using this methodology. The acronym is DAM. It's a DoD assessment methodology. There is a methodology to do this. Develop a system security plan, okay, which documents what are your in-place controls right now and what are the ones that are planned for the future, because now you know what they are. And those go on a plan of action and milestones, and you submit that to the SPRS system, okay? Now, how do you get through this? Well, we offer a service and a solution along with, it's our software, it's our core compliance platform, which actually walks a customer through going through this process. It is 110 questions, if you will, controls that have to be addressed. And as you go through it, part of our offering is not just going at it alone. We have full-time consultants on staff that help our customers walk through them and actually make sense of what these controls mean and what they are asking for. They are written in English, but that doesn't mean they're written in plain English or layman's terms. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand what do they mean and what should I do to get through it. So that's what we help with. That is what we do as our service. All right. There's a note that be aware that DCMA is conducting its own assessments to verify compliance. And we are getting more and more people coming to us, sometimes in a panic, sometimes in not, saying, I need a SPRS score quick because I'm being locked out of a contract that I want to bid on and participate on because I don't have a SPRS score. That's not the place to be in, everybody. That's waiting till the absolute last minute, and you may lose out on that contract. And we've seen some of our customers being locked out of a lot because they don't have this stuff in place. So we would definitely urge everybody to be ahead of that curve. One of the things that I really want to make mention of, and you'll see it in a future slide as well, everyone, this could really be a business differentiator for you. This could be the difference between you getting a contract for business or somebody else, and it could be your competitor. Taking this seriously and going through this process and going through what's required before others do sometimes could really, really make the difference. It could really set you apart, and we believe it will set you apart. It's those that take this seriously and do what they've got to do, and those that don't. And those that don't are going to be locked out of revenue in the future. For sure, it's almost a guarantee at some point. What month, what day, what year, well, that will come, but it's almost a guarantee. All right, so let's take a look at how does CMMC apply to me, meaning you. How does this apply to you? All right, so the clauses of CMMC are expected to be included in RFPs and contracts in the future. That's an expectation. It will happen. And the required CMMC level, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will be specified. We're thinking that many will be at a level 3. We're all hoping that maybe lots right out of the gate will be at a level 1, but that has yet to be determined. Okay. Again, we talked about who does this apply to. It applies to all prime contractors and their subcontractors, with the exception of custom off-the-shelf software and micro purchases. There will be some exceptions, but they will be spelled out. We don't know exactly what they all are yet. So, buying custom, COTS software, custom off-the-shelf software will probably be excluded from these requirements, but not the machining, not the custom development, the custom software development. We don't think that's going to be excluded. And what kind of micro purchase could be excluded? We're not sure yet. We all have to wait and see. And it does say, regardless of products and or services sold. It also does not make a differentiation between yet, how big is your company? How many people do you employ? How much business do you do with the government? There's not those those separations yet. We are all hoping that as CMMC goes through some reviews that they're going through, that maybe there'll be some refinement, and maybe they'll come out and make it a little easier for the small and micro businesses to stay engaged with the government, but there's no guarantee on that yet. Okay. Obviously, I think it probably goes without saying here, this little graphic right in the middle of the screen. We think that the less sensitive information will have lower level certification applied to it. The higher level certifications will be for more sensitive information, but we don't know how DoD is going to roll this out yet. So it's really good to get prepared. All right, so let's talk about some of the certification levels within CMMC. You've heard me already talk about level 1 through 5, and here's kind of what it looks like in a grid. So level 1 is where everybody starts, and there are 17 practices that have to be addressed in level 1. And it builds, CMMC builds upon each level. So in level 2, you'll see 72 practices, which include the 17 from level 1. And then level 3, it might look daunting. It's really not as bad as it needs to look there on the screen. It's 130 practices. It actually includes the ones from level 2 and obviously from level 1. We believe that most small businesses will fall between level 1 and 3. You'll say, wait a minute, John, what about that level 2 there with 72? Level 2, we think that it's probably going to be skipped. It's really a stepping stone to level 3. It does bring some new practices, but we really believe wholeheartedly that most people are going to be asked to either comply at level 1 or 3. Now you may say, well, wait a minute, what about those level 4 and 5s? Those are probably going to be reserved for some service providers to the government, to some really sensitive data restriction, type contracts. But it has to be seen. We are not exactly too worried yet about levels 4 and 5, but we're keeping an eye on them. We are. Sort of the murmur that we've heard from a lot of our customers is they're starting to be asked about level 3. So that's really where we focus. Now here's kind of the flowdown diagram that we use to show the requirements flowdown. So, our fictitious Big Corp Incorporated is a prime, and you've got tier 1 subcontractors that handle CUI, and even those subcontractors at tier 1, they may have subcontractors of their own down at tier 2. They may have subcontractors down at tier 3. Really, this is about following the flow of CUI. Just because you have subcontractors does not mean that the requirements are going to flow down to them. But if they handle CUI, then you can just follow this flow, sort of the right-hand side of this diagram to see, follow the CUI, and you'll follow the flow down requirements that are most likely going to have to apply. Everybody in the chain, everybody who's handling that CUI is going to have to be compliant at one time or another. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about CMMC Level 1. And you may currently meet some of these, maybe all of them, but there are 17 requirements. And as you can see in our graphic here, and I'm going to use my mouse to sort of mouse over, there's 2 that address network connections and firewalls. There's 1 that's around employee policy, 1 around media and device protection, your visitors and how you secure your facilities. There's 4 requirements in there that address that. 1 around Wi-Fi, wireless. There's 4 around device management and antivirus controls. And there's 4 that are around user accounts and passwords. Add them all up and you've got 17 that have to be addressed. And we think that, as many of our customers have really taken the time to think about setting their networks and their computers up. Maybe they have an outsourced IT shop that has done it for them. They already may meet a lot of these 17 controls, but maybe they don't. And there's only one way to find out, and that is to go through the assessment, conduct a gap assessment, and figure out how many of these do I already have well in hand and how many do I not. And for the ones that you don't have in place, we develop a plan. That's the plan of action and milestones. Figure out what's required and go through that. Level 3, and I'm going to go through this one kind of quickly, just looking at the clock. Level 3 is 130 controls. You can see the different areas that they take into consideration. 110 of these are just about directly from NIST 800-171. So they may or may not be completely foreign to people that are going through this. They may say, I've heard that before. The types of security practices that make up CMMC Level 3, well, there's about 40% of them that are organizational controls that are usually handled by company management or require management involvement around policies and training. 60% of these controls, these 130 controls, are usually handled by IT, whether that be internal IT or external, an MSP or a company handling those. And they are truly technical. Some people are very, very scared of those technical controls until they get in it and we really talk through them and they find out it's not as scary as it really maybe needs to be. There are some maturity levels here baked into CMMC. As you go through level 1, level 2, you can see that at level 1, when we talk about those 17 at level 1, they just have to be performed. They don't have to be documented like they do in level 2. That's where level 2 comes in. That's why we call it a step level, because it's really about documenting what you're already doing in level 1. Level 3 gets into, you have to show that it's being managed. And there's as you get further down, you can see the word institutionalizing these practices within your company as you get higher and higher. And so you cannot wait until the last minute on these things. You have to get started at some point if you're going to remain working with the government. So how do you get prepared? Well, here's a grid and a little bit of a timeline. As we start here on the left-hand side of this, first is you got to learn what these requirements are and conduct an assessment. You got to fill out your system security plan, your plan of action, milestones. You got to get a roadmap together and a budget. Maybe these are things you can do now, maybe things you have to do later, but you got to get a plan together. Then you've got step 2 is you got to implement and actually implement some of these controls and fix some of these issues and get going on it. Put in policies that may be missing, train your people on areas that maybe they hadn't been trained on before, upgrade some technology that may need to be upgraded. And then the last level, if you will, is to get ready for that third-party certification. And so some of this could be having a company like Core or a different consultant come in and actually find out how ready are you? How ready are you for that eventual assessment? Okay, that final step, getting ready. You could see here that we say in level 1, it could be about 2 to 3 months. A level 3 prep project could take between 6 and 9 months. And a lot of this depends on how much time do you have to spend with us going through this and getting on calls and reviewing this. Could be shorter, could be longer. We have seen customers take up to over a year to go through this because they just don't have a lot of time to go through it. One of the things I do want to mention, we do have a sort of a new offering, a new way to look at this, where we are actually helping customers as a virtual outsourced entity of theirs to actually do some of this for them. Write some of the policies and bring them forward. Implement some of the technology that needs to be implemented on behalf of the customer if they don't have in-house personnel to do it, or even if they have an outsourced IT group, but they're not exactly ready to do it themselves either. All right, I'm going to kind of go fast through a couple of these slides because I want to get to some of the end ones here, and you know, we're running short on time. There definitely, when we do projects, we have a team. We find out who from the client and who from Core needs to be involved in the project. So if you've got an IT person, we'd like them there. If you've got an outsourced IT group, we'd like them there. And then we all can go through this on behalf of the customer and, you know, get them closer to the finish line. All right, so what does it cost? And I said I don't have any hard dollars here, but here's some of the expected costs that go into a CMMC project. There's definitely, you know, consulting costs that could go with bringing in a company like Core to help with an assessment, the planning, the budgeting, the training, you know, the audit prep. There definitely will be costs in upgrading your IT systems if there's any deficiencies, like maybe enabling encryption or multi-factor authentication. There has to be some time involved, and time costs money, right? So there has to be some time for management and IT, or even your outsourced MSP, to help your company and your employees prepare. There will be an eventual assessment. You see this down there at the bottom. There will be an eventual assessment by some third-party assessor to actually do the assessment, and that will cost money. And then maintaining all of this, obviously, there's cost to that. I'm going to quickly go right into, you know, there's obviously challenges and solutions for small businesses. I just talked about expected costs, and that's one of the biggest concerns to any small business is what does it cost and what's the ongoing cost? Well, and what can we do to get started? Well, what has to be on your roadmap involves a lot of these areas that I just talked about on previous slides. Everything from wireless and securing it to, you know, policies and firewall, and all these things have to be addressed when we go through looking at all these controls. So, are your IT resources ready? Right? Do you have internal IT resources that can help go through this or not? And a lot of our customers do not. Do you have an outsourced IT group or managed, you know, MSP that can come in and help with this or not? Because sometimes, even though you may have an outsourced IT company, maybe that's not part of their contract. And unfortunately, we've actually seen a lot of managed IT companies starting to back away from customers when they bring this to them. They say, this is not an area that we want to get involved with. Why? Because then they would have some skin in the game, right? They may be called upon during an audit, during an assessment, to be part of the assessment and answer some of the questions. And maybe some of their technology comes into scope for your audit. And so this is a very tricky area to navigate. And this is why Core is offering some new and innovative programs and help, just good old, plain old help to our customers, because we've seen this happen. We know what kind of help our customers do need. Beware, not all MSPs out there are equal, and this is exactly what I just said. Do they have the experience? Do they understand this, you know, the controls and what's required? Do they have the technical skills? And by the way, do they have an interest in even learning these requirements with us all? And are they willing to become compliant themselves? Because if they're putting in managed antivirus or remote access to your systems, then their systems are going to be called into an audit, an assessment, just like your systems are. And so they are likely to have to become CMMC Level 3 certified themselves in the future. By the way, this is an expectation that CORE has, we have, that we're going to have to be certified. So we're putting in place the right things to make sure that happens. I'm going to go past this slide just in the sake of time and keep going. I want to show you all, these are very, very new to us and to you all, but seeing the problems and the challenges that our small business customers are facing, we are offering some solutions to this. And if you want to think about this as some turnkey solutions, some easy button solutions, I've heard all these acronyms associated with what we're putting together. And very quickly, you may, if you've been on other webinars or you've been around us in the past, you've heard us talk about a lockbox here in the top left. This is where we bring in a nice secure enclave. It is an additional computer or more than one computer as the customer's needs are. And it's on premise and it's secure, and all the security is built into it, and it covers right close to 80 out of 110 or 130 controls right out of the box. The rest are training and policies. And with this in place, and a lot of our customers like that solution, they find it's very easy. Put that in place and we've just sped ahead. Now, does it cost money? Yes, it costs money. I mean, it's additional computer and a little bit of extra gear, but it really, really speeds customers ahead on their journey to become compliant. Now, we've started to develop some new solutions based on our customer requests. They said, well, it's not just that one computer that we're interested in. Maybe we need down here in number 3, all of our computers. Maybe they only have 5, 10 computers. And so they've asked us, do you have an offering where you can come in and fix all of our computers and just get it done, fix it? And the answer is yes. We have an offering. We work we have an MSP that we work with, but we also will work with a customer's MSP to design a solution where that can happen. We also, this new one, I'll just say really quick in the sake of time here, this next one is a cloud offering. So like number 1 over here is on-premise, where we bring compute and we put it on-prem. We also have a new solution that we're releasing, and it's ready. We're actually quoting it now, where it's a cloud offering, where you don't have to have a computer that sits in the office. There are some people that are not in the office every day, especially during these COVID times. And so we have a cloud offering that can get the same security built in, and it really helps speed our customers along where they don't have to worry about as much. We're really trying to focus on the needs of the small business that we focus on the most here at CORE. We focus on the small and micro businesses. There's a lot of companies that don't. All right, so the small business opportunity, I want to reiterate what I said earlier. As I come to the last couple of slides of my presentation, this is definitely an opportunity for the small businesses out there. You can set yourselves apart, like I mentioned before, from other companies that may wait too long, and they may find themselves excluded and locked out from participating in contracts in the future. It's already starting to happen. We're already seeing customers locked out if they don't have that SPURS score. If they haven't addressed NIST 800-171 a long time ago, they're already being locked out. It's coming. We know that CMMC is just a matter of time when that starts locking people out of contracts as well, if you're not compliant at some level. It can mean the business between you getting some of this new business or not, or even renewals of business that you rely on and you think, well, that's easy, that's just going to keep coming. It's just renewals. They keep asking me over and over. I get these POs every week. That could dry up. The effect to your revenue stream when this happens could be one that you do not want to care to explore. And you may find out that the overall process, and again, ending sort of on a positive note here on this slide, is you may find out when you get into this, especially if you work with CORE, that the process and the overall cost of getting compliant was not as bad as maybe you thought. And it's definitely not as bad as missing out on the revenue that you will get from these contracts over time. We are here to make this as easy as possible. We're here to make this as simple as it can be. And we're here to help and get people closer to the finish line of being ready for that eventual assessment. And we also plan to stand by our customers. It's very important that I mention this. We plan on standing by our customers when they are assessed. If there's anything that they fall short on, the assessor finds something that we haven't planned for, any of us, we plan on being there for our customers side by side. Sometimes we might be the ones that are going through the assessment on behalf of our customer. If a customer chooses sort of that full service route where they want us to be the ones representing them in that eventual assessment, we may be that group. And with that, I'm going to just pause for a moment here and take a breath. And I thank you all for hanging in there with me. We're at 45 minutes by my clock. We'd like to take some time for some Q&A if there is any out there. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and Maddie and see if there's any questions that have come in or any that you all want to put in right now that you could ask.
Hi, John. Okay, so we do have a question. Someone's asking, do you have a list available that shows what controls the lockbox meets?
Absolutely, we do. And if you reach out to me, and I'll try to make sure my contact information is back up. I could actually restart from the front so we see it. Absolutely reach out to me, and we do help with customers. That's actually one of the benefits of working with Core. So any of these solutions I just talked about, whether it be the on-prem or in the cloud, we want to make sure that we have a list going of all the controls that it covers and how it covers so that you're audit ready. And we think that's really part of the value of working with us, is that you will be able to speed ahead and we'll be able to prove it. So the answer is yes, we absolutely do.
Perfect, thanks. That was from Zach Young. So Zach also asked, when updating my SPRS score, do I need to create a new assessment or do I just edit the current one?
It's a very good question, Zach. That's one that I'm not ready to answer. I'm going to have to find out for you. I would like to tell you that you should just be able to go in and update it, but I want to be sure that I give you the right answer. There's somebody here in Core on my team that will know the answer to that. Let me get that. And I know Maddie is on here from Core from our team. We'll take that, Zach, and we will get that answer back out to you as quickly as we can. And if that answer is interesting to everybody else, Kelly, I'm going to share that answer with you in case anybody else wants it.
That's great, thank you. Brad McCormick wanted to know how many policies are required for CMMC Level 3?
How many individual policies are required? That's a very good question. And as a matter of fact, we are going through an exercise right now because we have policy templates for customers that have gone, are going through NIST, right? The first 110. So the first 110 of CMMC is really NIST 800-171. We have a list of policies, policy templates ready to go for customers that come and work with us. And basically they have to, fill it in with their company name and fill in a little bit more, and it's ready to go. It's pre-built. As long as it meets the customer's requirements, it's ready to go. The reason I'm kind of hesitating to answer you directly is we have customers that want to take these policy templates and embed them in their own policies or put them together as one policy compilation book, if you will. And so we are going through right now with CMMC, there's an additional 20 controls that got added basically to NIST. And we're looking at those additional policies, but now CMMC even introduces the concept of procedures and plans. And so not only do you have to have policies, but you have to have documented procedures and plans. And so we are working with our customers to figure out, I know it's not a great answer right now to give on this webinar. I'd like to give you an exact answer of how many policies are required. I'll have that answer shortly as we complete some of our internal assessment of, do we already have these? Can we massage some of the ones we have? Does that meet, or do we need complete new ones?
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Brad also asked, is your cloud solution at least G3 compliant?
That's a very good question. And my answer is, it is not G3, it is AWS GovCloud based. And we wanted to make sure that we were in the right cloud, right? You're either going to take the Microsoft approach or the AWS approach to that. And we took the AWS because that's the partner that we work with. And we are in the GovCloud, so we inherit, we all get to inherit their FedRAMP, part of their FedRAMP, not all of it, but part of their FedRAMP. It's ITAR compliant. and it has the FIPS 140-2 encryption built into it. So what I would tell you is we believe wholeheartedly we're in the right cloud, not to take anything away from Microsoft or any other cloud, but for our customers, we're in the right cloud to be able to prove the security and compliance that's going to be needed when it comes time to be assessed.
Perfect. I do not see any other questions. I did want to make mention in the handouts drop down, there is a handout that we had in here. It's a one-pager that has an info sheet on exactly CORE's offering. There's a contact information. It also has the discount that is applied to members of NTMA. And I do believe it has contact information. So we will be sending out the recording of this webinar along with the slide deck for everyone who registered. So even if you had to drop off or you weren't able to attend, we will be sending that out to everybody. And John will have his contact information, and I will attach Drew, who is our main contact over there, in case you have any other questions that you'd like to ask. So again, I'd like to thank John for joining us today and being so gracious with giving a presentation with such a great topic. So if there's nothing else, I guess we will end the webinar.
Great. Thank you all. Very happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Have a great day, everybody.